Is Saturday a must-win game for UCLA football against Indiana? Is Logan Loya in the doghouse? And are we feeling nervous at all about DeShaun Foster as a head coach? We'll jump into all that and more on this edition of Over and Under Reactions with my boy Will Decker. But first, let's hit that music. Let's get this one going.
UC, LA, UC, LA, Bruin family, you know the place to be. UCLA fans, it's GAV.
That's right. What's going on, everybody? My name is Gavin Carlson. This is the GAV YouTube channel for all things UCLA sports, and I'm joined today by the man, the legend in the Bruin content creating community from the LA Football Network. It is Will Decker. How you doing today, Will?
Dude, I mean, I could call you a legend after hearing that opening song. It's got your name in it. It's got the UCLA. I'm like, this is damn cool, man. Excited to be here, dude. Excited to see you doing big things with the Locked On Network. And, dude, we're doing our favorite thing. We're talking UCLA football. I mean, what could be better than this, my guy? This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, this is a new YouTube channel for those who are not aware. This will be the first ever video on the channel. Like Will mentioned, I do some stuff over at the Locked On Network with postcasts and all that. And then now I've got my own thing right here, my own channel, my own baby that I'm going to try to turn into my own thing. It's independent. You know, I was at the Daily Bruin. If you don't know who I am, I was at the Daily Bruin. And of course, very structured system there, right? I'm working for a newspaper that's at UCLA. We're all UCLA students, but we're also independent from UCLA. So it's like I was towing this line of, you know, obviously I'm a UCLA student. We all know that I'm secretly rooting for UCLA, but I have to be unbiased. But I'm still at UCLA, so I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Now, this is my own thing, not associated with any networks, any publications. That doesn't mean I'm going to start running around saying crazy stuff, but it just means I can really fully say what I think and also do it with someone like Will. I'm going to have a lot of other great guests throughout this whole channel experience. But today, let's jump into it. Let's not waste any more time. As you heard in the intro, this is Over Under Reactions, the first ever Over Under Reactions. I'm going to say some statements that I've been hearing from UCLA fans, whether it's on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it nowadays. You know, just talking to my family, my friends, people at UCLA in Westwood, hearing a lot of crazy things after that season opener against Hawaii. Obviously, the Bruins were able to win 16-13, but did not impress anybody. And so there's a lot of hot takes. And we're going to jump right in to the first one, Will. Over under reaction. I want to talk about Logan Loya. Is Logan Loya in the doghouse? Because personally, I came into this year thinking Logan Loya, he's going to be one of, if not the primary target for Ethan Garbers. I remember the first time we ever did something together, Will, we were talking up J. Michael Sturdivant. We still think J. Michael Sturdivant has like sky high potential. He showed it at times last season. Rico Flores certainly showed his potential. And I know you're a TMA guy, so I'm curious what you think, because coming to this one, I thought Logan Loya, there was some talk about, oh, he's not a starter on the depth chart. I thought that was a load of blank. I was like, come on, it doesn't really matter with a piece of paper. He's going to be the slot receiver, but he wasn't. He was not really used at all, which was shocking. He didn't even have a single target. So over under reaction, is Logan Loya in some sort of doghouse, Will?
Man, I think normally when you would look at this situation, and first and foremost, it's an honor to be on the inaugural Over Under podcast here on GAV. This is going to be great. Normally when you look at, you know, somebody that led the team in receiving and coming back and being the fourth guy, kind of the odd man out of the top three wide receiver trio, you would initially assume like he's in the doghouse. I actually don't think he is particularly in the doghouse, because I tell you what, I went to a lot of spring practices, went to a couple fall practices as well. And this unit is just stacked, man. I mean, J. Mike, he just has athletic tools you can't teach. I mean, this guy was a 100, 200-meter dash champion in the state of Texas when he was a high schooler at 6'3", 205 pounds. I mean, Dane Brugler called this guy the number 5 wide receiver prospect if he had left UCLA last year before the season started. So, like, the potential with J. Mike, I mean, you just have to turn on the film and just watch it. You go, holy cow, that guy's an NFL talent. He's a pro. Yeah. You got Rico Flores coming in there now. And Rico Flores, as a redshirt freshman, former 4-star talent, was offered by Ohio State, Georgia. I love Logan Loya, but he wasn't onto that level coming in as a prospect. He was the second leading receiver on Notre Dame's team last year. And I mean, yes, Notre Dame just had a brutal loss, but think about it, man. That is a blue blood school. They get a lot of top level talent. So for him to kind of ascend the depth chart that high at Notre Dame, this kid can absolutely play. I mean, he had like 3 catches for like 100 yards and a touchdown in that game. I mean, he had that sick one, 40 yards, Ethan Garbers in the breadbasket. My favorite play of the game, Garbers rolling out to the right-hand side, hits Flores in motion. Flores takes like 50 yards down the field. And then you get to Titus. And I don't think there was a bigger, I don't want to say surprise, because I forgot he was coming back in a lot of metrics. There was so much offseason news where Chip departs to Ohio State. The coaching search commences. We find DeShaun. Okay, we got to give him a coaching staff. There were so many storylines that by the time we got to spring, and mind you, Chip Kelly left at the Super Bowl. This is February. We had spring practice like late March. So it was going a little nuts, So Titus comes out there, and I will tell you from one thing to another, Titus may have been the most consistent receiver in spring and fall. He won that starting job straight up. I mean, the last fall practice I went to, Gavin, he had 5 targets. 4 of them were touchdowns, and he dropped a touchdown. Like, he was unguardable in, fall camp. So, like, as much as I love Loya, I think it's a testament to, like, when you bring in these new coaching staffs and new schemes and, Eric Bieniemy, new guy on campus type of thing, you got to unfortunately prove yourself all over again. I'm not saying Loya can't do that, because I'm a huge Logan Loya fan. I think he's going to be a big factor on special teams if we send him out for punt returns and kick returns. I think he could still be a very elite slot guy. It's just a testament to how deep this room is. So I don't think he's in the doghouse. I think if he gets an opportunity to shine, he definitely will. But it's just a stacked receiving core, my guy.
Yeah, I think I was struggling with this one. It's funny, I chose to start with this one, and this one's maybe one of the ones I'm not the most sure about. I will say it's probably an overreaction to say he's in the doghouse, but I don't think it is, not a story, because certainly, like you're saying, there are 3 receivers that obviously got a lot more burn than he did. I was just shocked by the complete lack of involvement. It's one thing to be on the field and maybe not get targeted 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I mean, there was games last year when it felt like it was Logan Loya or bust for this offense. Obviously a completely different scheme, and we'll get into Eric Bieniemy. We'll get into the lack of short passing and how I feel about that. But it felt like with Chip Kelly last year, it was often run, a lot of motion, Logan Loya, drag route, Logan Loya, dig route, out route, a lot of short completions. Felt like every time you needed a 3rd and 6, Logan Loya was the guy. So to go from that to he's not even on the field other than in special situations at times, that was the biggest adjustment to me. I thought there would be more rotation there. I mean, to see Carter Shaw having a 27-yard catch when Logan Loya does nothing, it's like that's what's kind of makes it certainly a story, right? It's like everyone's going to have a bad quote unquote game, but to not have that much involvement at all was definitely surprising. So I'll say overreaction to doghouse. I agree. It's not like I don't think he did anything to upset anybody, but certainly a story to talk about. I kind of hinted at it. Let's get to Eric Bieniemy, because I was very critical. I think most people were very critical of obviously the offensive showing. And of course, the offensive line was arguably the worst part of that season opener. And whenever your offensive line isn't working, it's hard for anything to work, right? So you have to consider that when we talk about Eric Bieniemy. But my over or under reaction question is, are there any concerns about Eric Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator in college football? We know everything he did with the Chiefs. We know there's some mixed feelings about Eric Bieniemy in terms of what he did in Washington, but I think it's pretty safe to say he achieved a lot in the NFL, coaching, in my opinion, already the 2nd best quarterback in NFL history. We'll get into that another time, but it just felt like this offense was so pro style that it was a little like unaware. It was kind of like not ignorant, but it's like you got to adjust to what you're doing. I loved seeing the variety. It's single back formation, I formation, stuff you don't see very often in UCLA terms, but really in West Coast football terms. And sure, it's fitting time to switch going into the Big Ten, where you see Michigan and you see other teams like that certainly lining up in those formations. It felt nice to see that for us, but there was no adjustment. You can't do single back, long developing play action plays when the second Garbers fakes the handoff, he's getting sacked, right? Or if you don't have a rollout and he's sitting in the pocket and you're waiting for these long developing routes to happen. And he was under pressure, I felt like, every time he was trying to make a big time throw. So I was concerned about Eric Bieniemy a lot. And I don't think it's an overreaction. I'll say it is the correct take. It's not an underreaction. I'll say it's correct to say maybe we should be a little bit concerned about Eric Bieniemy. I know it's been one game, so this is all judging one game, but that's all we have to judge. And just the lack of adjustment until really the late third quarter. I thought the early third quarter, he started to show some adjustments in terms of got Garbers rolling out, had a quick screen to J. Mike that we were all begging for. So here and there, some signs of adjusting. But Will, that was a very long spiel for me because I am very passionate about this. But over underreaction, Eric Bieniemy, we should start questioning if he's ready for college football.
I am going to play the waiting game. And I know that's not the sexy answer, if you will, but, give me if he's still struggling by the Minnesota game. Because to me, all season, if we take care of business against Indiana at home, we're 2-0. I don't think anyone has us winning the next 3 games, right? Whether it's LSU in Death Valley. I mean, come on. That is a crazy game to go to. I know SC just beat them. But, guys, we are – I hate to say it, the D'Anton Lynn hire going to, USC has been a huge one. It hurts my heart to see Kamari Ramsey playing well, for USC. So there's a lot of good stuff going on with those two guys, unfortunately, with the school down south. But, you have Oregon. Yes, they've been struggling. Maybe that might be the best chance we can win. Ironically, I scheduled that as the hardest game coming in to the season. Then you got Penn State. But if we're 3-3 at that point, we take care of Minnesota the following week. We take care of Indiana this week. I am going to reserve judgment until then. I think that's kind of my stance on it. For me, the thing that was most concerning was the offensive line, and that's not necessarily Bieniemy's job. Juan Castillo is the offensive line coach. He's got to get those guys, whip them up into shape. Garbers looked shook in the first half too. And this is coming from a guy that, really thinks the world of Ethan Garbers, thinks he can maybe lead the Big Ten in passing if you follow Eric Bieniemy's paper trail of what he's done as, a coordinator in the NFL level. I mean, nobody threw the ball more than the Commanders last year when he was with Washington. And then you saw what he did with the Chiefs. But I will say this, the more that I've had time to kind of, think about it, look back on his time with the Chiefs, what Andy Reid's strong suit is calling an offense. So it's kind of like, how much was Bieniemy actually doing there is kind of my thought process. It's the same. I'm a 49ers fan. We were just talking before. I'm from the Bay Area. When it's the 49ers, like Kyle Shanahan is the OC. Like that, he calls the offensive plays. That's his job. Andy Reid's very similar to that, right? Spagnuolo for the Chiefs calls the defense. I think it's a great place to maybe learn play calling, but I don't know how much of the offense was EB sending plays out there. That's kind of my 2 cents leading into it. He was a guy I wanted in the offseason, given the accolades that we've seen, 2-time Super Bowl champ, been in the league for a long time, was a running backs coach at UCLA back in 2005. But yeah, that is a long answer. I mean, you had a long question. I got a long answer for you, Gav. I'm going to say, let's just wait on it because one game, it's not the answer everyone's looking for, but in today's day and age, patience is rare and it's a virtue. Give the man some patience. After this Indiana game, if it goes as bad as it went in the first half against Hawaii, we can definitely have a discussion. I'll say that.
Yeah, what you brought up a great point with Bieniemy and the lack of responsibility in Kansas City. That was the one thing, because we'll start at the beginning. When UCLA decided to hire DeShaun Foster, I was at this point still a student. I was doing my Daily Bruin stuff. I was with my man Jack Nelson doing the Out of Bounds podcast. We were talking about this hire, and the one thing we kept saying is we have to wait to see who the offensive and defensive coordinators are, particularly offensive. Because that was before, I believe, D'Anton Lynn had exited. Actually, no, it wasn't, because he left before Chip left. But still, at the end of the day, obviously, DeShaun Foster is an offensive guy, but he's never called plays, and you're not expecting him to. That was always the question. We're not going to kind of judge the DeShaun Foster hire until we see the staff that surrounds him, because they're arguably going to have more responsibility than him on game day, right? Of course, DeShaun Foster is the culture setter. He is the lead recruiter. But on Sunday, And we'll get to it in a little bit. That's kind of why I'm going to be maybe a little bit more critical on DeShaun Foster than some would expect, because I feel like he actually doesn't have that many responsibilities on game day, as many as you could expect for a head coach. When they went with Eric Bieniemy, it's like, okay, you have DeShaun Foster, who's never called plays, who's never been a head coach. And then you would probably want the most hands-on offensive coordinator for that type of head coach, right? Someone who has always called plays, who's always designed the system. And Eric Bieniemy is kind of the opposite. Of course, he did it in Washington, but to limited success. And then in Kansas City, like you're saying, it was all Andy Reid, right? So if this was the type of head coach who's also pretty hands-on in terms of play calling and stuff like that, maybe you can have Eric Bieniemy. This is kind of like DeShaun Foster is almost hands-off. He literally said, like, I'm making game management decisions, but Eric Bieniemy is calling every play. And you're right. We haven't really seen him do that to success and have success doing it yet in his career. So that's why it's kind of an interesting partnership that the jury's out. Right.
And I want to say, I'm not saying it was completely all Andy Reid, but what I am saying, and who knows how much he actually contributed to the offense. I know he got the job for OC of the Chiefs. Like, that's a hell of a job within the National Football League, right? Of course. But my stance is, how much did he contribute? And if it was like more in the 20% him, 80% Andy, it's easy to look good next to a genius, because Andy Reid, for my money, outside of Bill Belichick, probably the best head coach I've seen in my lifetime as a fan of the NFL. So, it's a completely different ballgame when you have to get out there. And, for reference, this is not just an opinion. This is an actual take. The Commanders did not have a good offense last year with Bieniemy. So we got to see how this plays out moving forward.
Yeah, I forget where I saw it, but there was comments. Oh, I think it was under my postcast on the Locked On Network, and someone said, "I'm a Commanders fan. You'll learn real quick about Eric Bieniemy." And I was like, okay, hopefully you're not right. I'm not going to judge anything based on what someone says in the comment section of a video. That is, don't do that. But it is true that obviously, yes, there was not a lot of success there in Washington. I guess, we're still talking about the offense here. I'll do one more. We'll get to the defense, and then we'll talk about Saturday. One more for the offense. We talked about Logan Loya. We talked about Bieniemy. We have to talk about the quarterback, and I give us some credit. Most shows, most football, the first thing is always the quarterback. I'm not always, doing that. So I'm glad that we waited a little bit to get to this. But Ethan Garbers, over under reaction, is he the same exact quarterback he was last year? Here's the statement. He did not get any better in the offseason. Over or under reaction? What do you think?
Man, it's tough to say. I was very high on him coming into this year, just because the way he was able to finish last year. And I know that USC team was not nearly what it is now, but he outdueled Caleb Williams and won against USC, the guy who was the number one pick in the NFL draft, right? And then he gets us our first bowl win, in close to over a decade for UCLA football. I think it was the 2015 Alamo Bowl, the last time UCLA won a bowl game. So he had a lot of momentum rolling into the year. Was I incredibly concerned with the first half? Of course I was. I mean, it was not a sight for sore eyes, if you will. I mean, 69 yards, 2 interceptions in that first half. It was, I mean, maybe one of the worst halves of football I've covered since we've been covering UCLA. And then the second half, it was like a completely different player. So it really depends on what version we're getting of Ethan. I mean, he threw for over 200 yards in the second half, made some big, big throws. I particularly remember the play. It was a false start in the offensive line. We need this drive to maybe get the game-winning field goal. It's 1st and 15, and he throws a strike to Matavau to, move the chains, keep momentum back on UCLA's side. He was really good in the second half. And with the attempts, I mean, we had 38 passing attempts to 20 rushing attempts. If he has that attempts in play, and just knowing how deep this receiving core is, there's a real chance this guy can lead the Big Ten in yardage passing. That was one of my hot takes coming into the year. So I'm not going to overreact on Ethan just yet. If he has another, it's very similar to the Bieniemy thing, where it's like, if we struggle again this game and he comes out in the first half and kind of lays another egg, because, I mean, dude, he threw 2 of the worst interceptions you'll ever see. One in the red zone and one on your own 10-yard line. The second one, it was eerily similar to what Will Levis did for the Tennessee Titans this weekend, where he just kind of flipped it up, and Tyreek Stevenson got the pick 6. I mean, you just can't throw that ball 100 times out of 100. Just take the sack. I do blame the play calling a little bit to even just try to get a passing play there instead of just kneeling it and going into halftime. But you just can't get rid of that ball. But to his credit, and what he's done in his entire career, man, is he bounces back like nobody I've seen. Like, he loses the starting job last year to Dante Moore. And we're like, that's probably the last we're going to see of Ethan Garbers. Like, he already transferred here from Washington. We'll see what happens. And he just kind of rallied, stayed around, got the job eventually, made plays. And I don't know, you just can't quit on Garbers. So I'm actually in on Ethan. I think he's going to be good. Was it a terrible half of football? Absolutely. He told us the same thing with the media this week. Do I think it's going to be that bad moving forward? Absolutely not. I hope for a better play call. We have 2 weeks to prepare for this Indiana game, and I'm hoping our boy Garbs comes out ready to spin the rock.
Yeah, I'll go a step further. I will call it a complete overreaction to say that he has not gotten any better, which probably is a crazy thing to say based on how bad he looked at times in that game. But I thought the second half, he showed us things that he hasn't shown us yet. And yes, the USC game is probably his, that's his game, right, so far. Obviously, like you said, he outdueled Caleb Williams. But even in that game, he had, a scramble here or there. If I remember correctly, he had a play where he broke a sack or was about to get hit, and he was on the right side, and he kind of made that short flip throw.
First play of the game, Gav, Hawaii was a draw play to him. He kicked it out to the outside and got the first down. He's sneaky athletic. I mean, even that play we referenced earlier with the Rico Flores, he manipulated the defense just enough where they took their eyes off Rico. They, blitzing the quarterback near the right sideline, and he just makes an incredible play for a 50-yard gain. So, like, he's really good. He's kind of got that Brock Purdy athleticism where it's like, is he like a true dual threat? It's like, nah, not really. But, like, can he get you a first down if he needs it? Can he, like, make the defense think about the run just enough to kind of, put some sort of package in there? Like, absolutely. So that's kind of who I would compare him to in a lot of ways in terms of his athleticism. But yeah, I think it's a complete overreaction on our boy Garbs. I think he's going to do well this week.
Yeah, and I think what you said about the scrambling is probably the main thing. I think people forget because last year was so chaotic for Ethan Garbers, and I was, I guess, known at least by the people who followed me and what I had to think. I was a big Dante Moore guy. Okay, I was, when, like most people, when you have, I don't know if it's official, what the official verdict is, but I think top 2, if not the number 1 highest recruit ever. I know it's debated with him and Jalen Phillips, and I think one other, but he, one of the top recruits ever in the program's history. Just doing things, what they're saying about Dylan Raiola in Nebraska, of this guy reminds you of Pat Mahomes in terms of dual threat, in terms of the arm. What they're saying about Caleb Williams, right? I was saying it about Dante Moore, and I think some people were in the showcases, the off-platform throws, everything, right? And so throughout last year, I was probably hypercritical on Ethan Garbers because I just didn't see a world where it was not Dante Moore leading UCLA this year, next year, the year after that, before he's inevitably a top 10 pick in the draft or something like that. But what people forget about Ethan Garbers' performance last year is they compare it to Dante's and they go, well, he certainly was better than Dante. There were a couple stinkers from Ethan Garbers last year, at least in my opinion. Like, people forget before he got hurt against Arizona, he didn't look good in that game. The Stanford game, he looked good, but you were playing a really bad team, right? USC, he was great, but there were high points and low points in the Coastal Carolina game to open the year. He didn't look
bad in that game. He was bad.
Yeah.
Well, I thought he finished strong though. Like, I really thought the momentum was really favoring him. Coming out of spring, I mean, we were talking on our own show last year, and this is coming from the guy that, put out the hashtag Dante to LA that got it like trending, on Twitter. Like, I was all in on Dante, but out of spring ball, there was just something there. And I think there's this weird thing with Garbers, because I don't want to say it's a lack of confidence, but there's something there where he got so rusty to start the season last year and this year, where maybe you just got to, figure it out from a mental standpoint coming in those games. But it was not pretty in both of those contests. But the way we say it, it's like you can't count out Ethan Garbers, man. He guy continues to make plays, continues to move the ball. when you count him out, he steps up and he surprises a lot of people. And that's just been the story of Ethan Garbers. I was in on Dante too until I wasn't. Like the Utah game, he was completely overwhelmed. He was great. Our Garbers, I felt like would have came in and won that game for us in a lot of metrics and stuff like that. He lost his confidence along the way. And I do think Dante Moore is going to be a fantastic quarterback with the Oregon Ducks eventually. But, I think Garbs is a pretty damn good college quarterback. I put him in the top 40 to 50 quarterbacks in the country right now. And that's a high statement for me.
Yeah. And I think I'm taking a while to get to the final point I'm making about Garbers, but I think in the second half and the first half, I'm almost fully blaming on the O-line and Bieniemy. Other than the red zone interception, which is totally on him, and that cannot happen. That just cannot happen. The second pick, I thought it was an unbelievably bad decision to call that play. That the offensive line showed you nothing the whole first half. You're not going to do anything in that amount of time anyways. I did not know why the heck we were, attempting that. And obviously, like you're saying, I almost disagree. I'm still on pro randomly chuck the ball, then take the safety. I had that debate with some people. I think in like the Will Levis example you gave, he's at like the 20-yard line, right? Like I think you take the sack there. And don't throw a pick six to lose the game against the Bears. Garbers, if I remember correctly, was in the end zone, right? He had to do something. And so I'm almost on pro chuck it and just see what happens. Of course, it did not work at all. Did not work well at all. But I almost don't want to count that interception fully against him. I think it's 80% coaching and offensive line, 20% him. Moral of the story, and what I'm finally getting to after taking all this time, second half, I was really impressed. The second Eric Bieniemy changes the system, the first couple of plays of the second half, does things that are going to help Garbers, get him in a groove, roll him out to his right, then make a nice throw, have him throw a quick slant to J. Michael Sturdivant. But then, like you said, the evasion to find Rico Flores on that play for the long completion, one of the best plays I've seen from Garbers like in his career. And maybe that's crazy to say, to move around like that. The deep ball to Rico Flores on point. The play before that, I think, the PI had him in stride, probably, would have been a play, maybe underthrew him a little bit. I was really impressed with what I saw in the second half. And I think people are overreacting to say he's not gotten better. I think he has already shown me a couple signs that point to him being, I don't know if I'm going to say leading the Big Ten in passing, but honestly, what we've been seeing from Big Ten offenses, that might not be that crazy of a take. Well, you might be right on that one. But let's jump into DeShaun Foster. And the question over under reaction is he ready? And what I saw a lot of online was people saying DeShaun Foster is not ready. I personally think that is not an overreaction. I think it's probably like in between being true. I think it's probably a fair statement. And I think the thing with him is he will get more ready with each week that goes on, right? That's what happens when you're doing anything for the first time. But what concerns me a little bit, and I hinted at it before, you're not calling the plays, right, offensively. You're not worried about the wide receiver room. Jerry Neuheisel's had that on lock, right, for most of the last couple of years. The running back situation did not look good. It was partially the O-line. But if you're primarily a running back coach and then just the game manager of clock and stuff, I feel like you got to give him an 0 for 2. I thought he did not manage the clock well a couple times. We talked about the decision to throw there towards the end of the half. I thought the decisions to kick a 52-yard field goal instead of going for it on like 4th and 4, I thought that was not quite as bad as Antonio Pierce for the Raiders this past Sunday, but almost there. Of come on, why are you kicking a 52-yard field goal when it's 4th and 3 or 4? Be aggressive, go get the first down, right? So I feel like he gets a offer in terms of game management. He gets an offer in terms of the running game, which is kind of the only aspect of the offense I'm going to look to him. And I think he gets maybe an offer for the only other thing you look for a head coach for, and that's having your team ready to play. I mean, we came out awful, right? So I love DeShaun Foster. I covered UCLA when it was Chip Kelly. I was in those press boxes. I was at those practices. There's nothing less fun than a Chip Kelly interaction. And the second DeShaun Foster showed up, whether it was the spring game or whatever, it's a lot more fun. And I think we all as UCLA fans will never have too many negative things to say about DeShaun Foster. But I think you got to give him an 0 for 3 in terms of the three things you're looking for from him. And that's why I don't think it's an overreaction to say that he's not ready yet. Now, will he become ready? Of course. And it starts on Saturday because this is the first game where you're still expected to win, despite what Vegas tells people. But it's a question of whether you actually do it. So, Will, what's your take?
Yeah, man, it's a tough one. Did he manage the game perfectly, 2 Saturdays ago, when they played Hawaii? Not in my opinion. We mentioned the play deep in their own territory. It turns into an interception. Hawaii gets a field goal. They're up double digits going to half. There's that 4th down where we tried a 53-yard field goal, not Pagani, but the kicker prior to that, where you kind of had to go for that. The momentum was kind of swinging there, and you just kind of saw it stagnate throughout the first half, with them not going for that 4th down conversion when it was just 2 yards away. But what I will say is, in order to get ready, you've got to make mistakes early. You got to, fail forward, if you know what I mean. It wasn't perfect last week. If he can learn from those mistakes and just keep moving forward, that's going to help him become reach the ceiling of him as a head coach in this game. So, you look at his resume, he was arguably the best running backs coach within college football, in my opinion. If you look at the star talent and how he got those players in the NFL, whether it was Joshua Kelly, Demetric Felton, Charbonnet, Britton Brown, all those guys got drafted, which is very, very impressive. And only one of those guys was a true 4-star talent in Zach Charbonnet. So,
who also struggled in his previous team too. Zach Charbonnet was not even really used at Michigan, right? A workhorse running back program, right? So I think people even then, yes, he's a 4-star, but maybe, when they bring out the transfer ratings, that it goes down to a 3 when we got him. People weren't really high on Charbonnet. So I think, absolutely. But I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I'm saying about DeShaun Foster. I think he's great, and you're totally right to point it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. There should have been some people, debating on what those decisions were in those games and how right they were and how wrong they were. But what I will say to that statement that you had about DeShaun is let's just give him time. One game, it's easy to get on, the first take cycle and just demand him saying, hey, this guy didn't show up in week 1. He's got to be punished. He's got to be accountable. I mean, yeah, but it's his first game coaching. He wasn't even an offensive coordinator at the level. He's learning all of this through Bieniemy. Let's just give him some time is my whole 2 cents on that. And, if he comes out, let's say we beat Indiana, handily. I mean, we're going to be 2-0 at that point. It's a pretty good – you can't be better than 2-0 through 2 games. So, let's just give him a little bit of a breather. It's his first game coaching period. The big thing is we found a way to win that game instead of losing it, right? So we found a way, as ugly as it was, just got to get the W, man. So find a way to get W's. They don't have to be pretty. I just want to win and the win column when we're done with the game, man.
Yeah, and that brings us to the last thing, which will be Saturday. Because and I don't know, maybe you disagree, but coming into the year, I looked at our schedule and thought, this is kind of ideal as it could get. Of course, we knew who the opponents were going to be. And so anytime you have to play Penn State, Oregon, LSU, USC, right? You knew it was going to be a tough schedule. Now, those 3 being in a row is kind of tough. But when I came into the year, I was like, you expect UCLA to win the first 2 games while, like you're saying, DeShaun Foster's getting his feet underneath him, learning how to be a head coach. Then you play 3 games with no expectations, right? UCLA, everyone who is not the biggest UCLA homer is probably saying UCLA should be big underdogs in all 3 of those games. So if you're thinking just in the DeShaun Foster perception thing, you're like, UCLA should win 2 games against 2 opponents that they should win. Your first Big Ten opponent ever is Indiana, who is not one of the top half teams in the conference. I mean, imagine if we opened up our Big Ten slate against Penn State and just lost by 28. Imagine all the, national media, this is why UCLA is just being dragged into the conference by USC. That's what everybody would be saying, right? But now I look at Indiana and what they did to start this season, and you have to say, wait a second, now I've completely flipped, and I'm thinking Indiana is one of those teams where, based on namesake, these are two basketball schools, right? UCLA and Indiana. And UCLA obviously has a lot more success as a football program than Indiana. So nationally, the people who maybe haven't been following things closely go, UCLA should win this game. And I think we still both think that. But yet, there's a good chance that Indiana could be one of the surprise teams of the whole year of the whole country, right? I know you were talking up the new head coach, absolutely everything he's accomplished there. And it's kind of this sneaky spot where nationally, in terms of betting, we're underdogs. But in terms of perception of football programs, it's like if UCLA can't beat Indiana, are they going to beat any Big Ten teams in the next couple of years? There's a lot of pressure. And so that gets to my long question of over-under reaction. Is this a must-win game for UCLA? It's crazy to say in week 2, especially for a team who's not trying to make the college football playoff this year or anything. But for so many reasons, in terms of public perception, Big Ten, it being one of your easier opponents, is this a must-win game? Over-under reaction?
Yeah, I think it is if you want to get to a bowl game in year 1. I think this is because if you go out there and lay an egg against Indiana, we talked about the next 3 games being what they are. You're going to look up. And let's just say that hypothetically it goes as planned, right? They lose those 3 games as expected. They're going to be 1-4, man. That is a rough start. And I just know human nature. People are going to be like a little bit, the energy is going to be a little zapped from the UCLA football program. Not only the fan base, but the players involved too. So they would have had 4 straight losses up to that point. There were certain games that we circled that, UCLA should win if they were going to go to a bowl game. Hawaii was one of them. Big struggle, but they got it done. Indiana, we'll see this week. I'm optimistic being at home, being at the Rose Bowl, not, flying out 6 hours to Hawaii as we will in the next coming weeks to the East Coast of the country. The Fresno State game at the end of the year, I think that's a must win, even though Fresno State has beaten us the last 3 times UCLA has played the Bulldogs. So that's going to be a little tougher than expected just from a mental hurdle for UCLA fans. Iowa just got beat by Iowa State this weekend. I think they're beatable. Washington, I know they got Jed Fish, who is a very, very awesome coach. Came from University of Arizona, former UCLA offensive coordinator. But we don't really know what Washington is through 2 weeks. They're solid, but I wouldn't say spectacular. So I'd say UCLA has a fighting chance there if they can kind of clean up some mistakes. Nebraska, just from what I've seen through 2 weeks, Matt Rule is a hell of a football coach. I can't rule a win, especially in Lincoln. I mean, you saw the atmosphere when they played Colorado. That is an intimidating, home crowd for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. But, I don't know. We'll see. For me, this is a must-win game on a variety of different things if they want to get to a bowl game. And that is my final stance when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, I agree for that reason of bowl game. Yes, because I don't care if we're in the Big Ten against I don't care if there's a season when we're playing Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon, and USC, and Washington, like all the premier teams in the conference. UCLA needs to be going to a bowl game every year. I think anybody who, there's a balance between realistic and, the complete homer or anything. But I just think anyone who's prideful of UCLA, as we are, right, thinks this team should go to a bowl game every year. And I know that over-under win totals have said the other side of that in this season, but I agree. Hawaii's got to be a win. Indiana is what I thought. This Indiana game is kind of what I thought the Rutgers game was going to be for UCLA in this schedule. I thought Rutgers was kind of the sneaky team that, not even sneaky. I think Greg Schiano was doing good things over there and a lot of recruiting. And I think there's kind of this question of whether or not he was going to be able to take the next step with them. But it seems like Indiana has sped up their rebuild and they might already be there. And I know they haven't played anybody yet. And I know a lot of people feel disrespected that UCLA is even an underdog in this game, but it feels like I was writing off Indiana and worried about Rutgers as one of those teams that's not a name, a football team program name, that's actually sneaky good. But now that's Indiana. I think you have to beat Minnesota. You have to beat Minnesota. That
might be the biggest game of the season right there because we're projecting 3 straight losses, right? Yeah. So if you want to right the ship, you got to take care of business against PJ Fleck in Minnesota. And I'll be honest with you, man, if Greg Schiano is a defensive coach, and he had Rutgers playing the top 20 nationally when it came to defense last year in a variety of statistics. If our offensive line is not fixed by the time we get to Rutgers, they're going to they're going to kill us on the trenches, man. Because what Rutgers does provide, man, is they're that lunch pail, hard hat type of defense.
Yeah.
They're going to come in, they're going to hit you hard, they're going to make you feel it, a couple days later, and they're very, very physical if I know Greg Schiano. So we got to be on our A game, even in that game. And, Rutgers offense, they got the lead returning rusher from the Big Ten last year in Kyle Monungai. But outside of that, they don't really have a lot on the offense. So I feel very confident if the offense is clicking, we can outscore them. We can at least get to like 24, 27 points, which I don't know if Rutgers is capable of, against UCLA's team. By the way, shout out. I know we lost Danton Lynn, but Okaika Malloy called a really good defensive game last week. I thought he did a great job. The adjustments he had at a halftime, we're down 10-0. Only let up 3 points the rest of the game. 13 points to a run-and-shoot offense in Hawaii that, I know they've been under 500 the last few years, but that is a bowl-like team that I think is going to be sniffing some bowl games this year, especially if Shager is healthy after getting banged up against UCLA. So, yeah, that is a long answer to say you're dead on, man. Like, I think if we win this game, we got a shot at a bowl game. If not, it could be getting really, really ugly here, unfortunately, for UCLA in the early parts of the season.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because, like you were saying, it would be nice to give DeShaun a couple games to ease into being a head coach, but there's no way that this game is not going to be close, and so we're going to learn a lot about his in-game decision-making. Will he then go for it this time on a 4th and 3, 4th and 2, instead of taking a long field goal? Will he still be aggressive late in the half when maybe the offense isn't showing you things? And I think the other thing is we're going to learn right away. I think it's not going to take a while to know what type of game we're going to see on Saturday, because we've got a guy or a team in Indiana that hasn't really played anyone yet, but has looked great. And then we have a team in UCLA who came out and immediately you could tell the O-line was a mess. Guys were not healthy and not playing well. So like in 3 snaps, 4 snaps, 5 snaps, if Ethan Garbers is sitting pretty in the pocket the first couple plays, right there. I mean, there's no betting in California, but if you were in another state, be confident that UCLA is going to win this game. If Garbers is under pressure right away, or if Indiana gets the ball and that offense looks like what it looked like against weaker opponents, and you're like, wait, they might just be that good, then it's going to be a long day. I think we're going to find out pretty early in this game what things are going to look like, and let's hope it was the first one, because, yeah, like it feels like a must-win game for so many reasons. You got 3 top 16 teams after that, and then Nebraska, by the time we play them, might be a top 15 team. USC's number 11 right now, and the other teams are not only they're unranked teams, but they're also teams that completely play a different style of football in the Minnesotas and the Iowas and Rutgers, right? The 3 unranked teams are also, it's not shootouts against Arizona State or something. These are smash mouth teams that still might give us problems. So yeah, it feels like a must-win game, which is not fair to say to DeShaun Foster in his second career head coaching game, but hopefully the Rose Bowl is crowded. Are you going to be there on Saturday or no?
Man, I am trying to make it out, so we'll see that. If not, I'm going to be watching with Madman, my co-host. He is on baby watch right now. He's about to have his first child.
Oh wow!
So he's got to kind of just kick it at the crib. So I may just watch it with my buddy Madman and just kind of take it in. We will be at a lot of games this year, if not this weekend. But man, it's the best time of the year. Football season is back and in full swing. You really can't ask for much more, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll see. I'm also kind of 50-50 on whether I'm going to be there. I'm hoping I can. I do got to get home before the game ends and do my post-game show, but I'll hopefully be able to tailgate, see some people, and at least see the first half and see what it's looking like in the Rose Bowl. I'm hoping there's a good atmosphere there. But we're going to wrap this one up. Shout out to you, Will. Thanks so much. Where can everybody find you before we wrap this one up on Twitter and with the LA Football Network?
Oh, man, just check us out at the LA Football Network. We got you covered from, Rams, Chargers, UCLA, and that school down south that we don't even refer to on this podcast. We got it all for you, man. So check us out, LAFB Network. We are the best at bringing football to Los Angeles, man. So give us a look.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for being here. This was the first ever video on this YouTube channel, so please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. We know it's going to take some time to grow this thing, but we're going to grow it the same way DeShaun Foster is going to grow the UCLA football program. But all right, thanks, Will. I'm Gavin Carlson. We're signing off. Take care, everybody, and have a great, great day. Go Bruins on Saturday. Let's do it.